Hmm. Good evening to all of you. Today topic is valuation. It's a great opportunity for all CA, all chartered accountant. We tried our best to enhance our knowledge and updation for this topic by our own CA Devan Patra ji. Let us our president, Mr. Tulsian, kindly say something for our speaker, topic, and for our organization. Please. President sir. President sir, unmute please.
I think there's some technical glitch at President's end.
I think because after several attempts he connected just before.
Kar, why don't you proceed forward and read out the profile?
Anyway, we have to start and we have to proceed further. Our co-chairman, C. Gopal Khetan, kindly introduce our speaker, C. Devan Patra. Please.
Thank you, Bhaiya. Good evening, everyone. I, on behalf of VIP CA Association, it's my pleasure to read out the profile of CA Devan Patra. CA Devan Patra is a fellow member of ICAI. He got the 27th rank in the CA entrance exam in 2007. He is one of the youngest regional council member elected at the age of 30 years. He is currently serving as a treasurer of the EIRC ICAI. He has been and is very active in various forum, association, study circle. His contribution is immense in the all study circles. He is always present whenever we ask him. He is involved in various sports activities. He speaks in various topics and contributed in many ways. He has served in various committees of the EIRC as a co-opted member in the last 5 years before his regional council membership. He is known for his visibility and knowledge sharing activities throughout the digital media. Devan Patra is also a certified financial planner, passed certified course on the forensic audit. He is the registered valuer for the security in assets. Thank you. I request the chairman Prakash Patwari ji proceed the session.
Mr. President, are you okay? Are you in position to connect? Anyway, Mr. Patra, kindly proceed to the topic and start the process.
Okay. Thank you very much to VIP Road Chartered Accountant Study Circle EIRC. Thank you very much to Mr. Gopal Khetan for the lovely introduction for me. Thank you for the good words. Thank you, Mr. Prakash Patwari, who has been in contact with me for the last few days so that we could contact this program. And no doubt the president and the convener, CA Vishnu Tulsian, has been very kind to give me this opportunity to share my very limited knowledge that I have in valuation with you all today.
Then you're unmute. Please unmute. Yes. Okay.
So you did not, you heard nothing?
No, it's okay. Now okay.
Okay.
No, we had a lot of it just the last over, probably 10 seconds.
Okay. So I must also thank the president and the convener, CA Vishnu Kumar Tulsian, who has been kind enough to give me this opportunity to share my very limited knowledge on valuation with you all. basically,
Okay.
so when we had the discussion, the idea was to share the basic knowledge of valuation, an overview, the methods in valuation, and also speaking about the opportunities and how to become a registered valuer. So in the process, I'll be sharing all these details, and I would also share a few stories when I speak, so that you can also enjoy uh, listening to the topic. This topic actually would require around 1 hour time, and then probably we can have the question answer session. So that is how the program was designed. And towards the end, I think probably, since this is a group discussion, so uh, I think the knowledgeable members who are present here would also be sharing their knowledge of valuation with all of us, so that we all can be enriched. So uh, is it possible for the president to speak?
Yes, start, sir. Please start.
Divine, you start. I think the
Okay,
president is
okay,
facing some
okay.
technical issues at his end.
Okay. So I'll share my screen in that case. Is the screen visible?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, it's visible.
okay. So before I move into the topic, since I told that I would be sharing some stories just to make the seminar a little bit uh, enjoyable. So I must also give a disclaimer that whenever I share any story, uh, I am neither promoting or demoting any of the religions or any of the countries of this world. So this is a disclaimer that I thought I should give in the beginning. And before I start, I would be starting with a story. Only 2 days back, it was Vishwakarma Puja, the god of engineering or technology, as we can say. And even I think Indradev, Vidyut, so Vajra. So without electricity, also it's not possible for any of us to do anything. So culminating together, we have technology and electricity, which is helping us even to conduct this seminar today on this virtual mode. So let me share a story of them. So once the god of the king of heaven, Indradev, so he was having a long reign in the heaven. So he thought that he should build a wonderful palace, a grand palace for himself, so that he can show to the world that he is the king of the heaven. So he called God Vishwakarma. So Vishwakarma ji came and he was instructed to build a wonderful palace. So Vishwakarma ji worked on it very minutely and built a wonderful palace for Indradev. So Indradev went to inspect the palace. After seeing the palace, although it was very good, Indradev was not happy. He said, No. See, I don't think that this palace is as valuable as I want a palace for myself. So it needs to be grander, it needs to be bigger. So Vishwakarma ji again built another palace, and then again Indradev was not happy. And this process kept continuing for 7 to 8 times. So at the end, Vishwakarma ji was tired and he went to Lord Vishnu and he said that this is the problem that I am facing. So Vishnuji, in the form of a very little boy, came in front of Indradev and asked, What are you doing? Why are you building these palaces? So Indradev said that, see, I want a grand palace for myself. So Vishnuji, in the form of this little boy, told him that there were many Indras before you and there will be many Indras after you. There were many grand palaces built before you, and the ones will be built even after you. So you will not be there for the all your life, all the time for which the universe will be there. So Indradev could understand a very important thing, that in the long time, the long space and time, no one has any value. So even Indradev will not have a value all his life and during the tenure of this universe. So this is a very important thing. None of us will be in our positions in the places where we are today. So valuation will depend very much on the time. So this also gives us a concept of time. So remember that in valuation, time will be a very important factor. So I'll also speak about it later on. Friends, in the nature, if we see that in this example, we found that Indradev was seeking value for himself. He wanted to create value for himself, but he understood that it's a matter of time. But in the nature, if we see that we are getting the oxygen, we are living on this earth, we get utility from fire, air, everything, water. But these elements never seek value for themselves, but still they are valuable to us. So what's the important thing that is there that it gets value? It is their utility. So whenever doing the valuation, we have to keep this perspective very clear, that whatever we are valuing, what is the utility that we derive out of it? And that could be again very different from different perspective. So it could be something for you and something else for the other. So maybe in a hilly area, in a place which is much cooler than where we live, obviously the need for fire would be much more. So the value would again depend on the participants or the perspective from whose angle the valuation is being done. So this concept also I'll speak of, participant specific value. I'll not waste much more time on this. So I was basically trying to tell you what value is. So it's all about utility. And you see these the trees, plants, they are all, and even we all are taking benefit out of these elements. And then again in the process, in the value chain, these things get consumed. An animal again lives on these plants, which has derived value from the elements. Again, the plant is valuable for these animals, and there are other animals for which these animals are also valuable. So that's how the value chain works. But then, friends, at the end of this value chain comes the most interesting element, the most interesting animal rather of this world. That is all of us human beings. Friends, we derive utility and we also want value for ourselves. We seek value, like Indradev was seeking value. I want value for myself, but then how do I do it? In this process, we could understand that we have to create some utility in the process so that we can have value for ourselves. And in the long history of humankind, this is what has happened. Human beings kept developing, growing, and developing various utilities in the forms of goods and services. But then we knew that in the beginning there was a barter system, and then came money, which helped human beings to term those values in some other terms, which is money, rather than that of other goods or services. And in the valuation process, again, money, that we all know, being chartered accountants, that is the main factor. We have to value the goods or services or the companies which are giving those utilities, supplying those goods and services. And that would be in the form of currency, money. And again, we have to be careful about whether it's a dollar or a rupee or pound or something else. While going through these concepts, we have understood one thing, that valuation would be subjective. And I'll again give an example at a later stage. So let us move from stories now and let us get into the topic a little bit. So for all valuers, we have to understand that valuation is not an exact science. It's an art, because you cannot always have a mathematical formula in valuation, because you have to consider various other uh, other considerations would be there, because participant who is valuing would be different, they would have different perspectives, and valuation is also an art. Many of the chartered accountants were into valuation, and I believe most of you have been doing valuation as chartered accountants also. In the process, you have already known that valuation is an art and is not an exact science. It's subjective and it depends on various factors, and there could be various ways to look at it. Now, let me also move into a few concepts that are very important in valuation. And while I speak of these concepts, we have to also understand that I am not just speaking of these things only because maybe I am trying to give a concept or something else. Rather, I must also say that these are part of the international valuation standards and also the valuation standards issued by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. So, coming to this first point, valuation basis. So basically it is the indication of the type of value being used. So one concept is fair value. So what would be a fair value? So in Ind AS also you have Ind AS 113 where we speak of fair value. So it may not be the cost value, it may not be the market price, but a fair value is an intrinsic value that an asset carries. That means a value that is derived from the future possibilities of the asset rather than the existing condition or the acquisition impacts. So it's about having which most famously or used as discounted cash flows method, or discounting the future benefits to the present. So that's how we get a fair value. A participant specific value. A participant specific value is also very important because we could be valuing a company, but for whom are we doing the valuation would again be very important, and based on that base, again the value could vary. For example, there are all these commercial buildings where we have our offices, especially in the Dalhousie. Now, let us consider a business house which has their business on the 4th floor of a building, a commercial building. And the ground floor gets vacated. That ground floor of that building gets vacated. And since these people are into a bit of manufacturing, they think that let us acquire this ground floor for storing the stocks. So let us use the ground floor as a godown. So we want to acquire the ground floor. Now, let us also consider that there is a similar person who is into the same line of business, but he has an office 25 kilometers away from that building. Now he is also interested in that ground floor. Now what would be the valuation? The valuations for both of them would not be the same, because very naturally the person who has an office on the 4th floor would be more interested in paying something more to acquire that ground floor, because that will give him more benefit as he is already present there. However, a person who is 25 kilometers away might think that fine, I will not pay much, I can rather have a go down somewhere else. So that's how the participant's specific value would be very important. The last one is the liquidation value. So it's in a way the opposite of fair value. Why? Because while calculating fair value, we were depending on the future. But in liquidation, we all know that it's all over. So the asset is not going to be utilized by the one who is selling. And most importantly, this is from the perspective of the seller. So who is already owning this asset. So naturally, the liquidation value would be much lesser than the fair value in common parlance. So basically, liquidation means the sale value or the price that I might get if I sell this asset now. Let us move to the next concept of valuation premises. Friends, when we devise the valuation report as valuers, we have to discuss all these things in our valuation report. We have to discuss about the valuation basis, about the valuation premises. Why am I choosing a specific valuation base? Why am I choosing a valuation premise in carrying out the valuation? So we have to deal with these valuation basis and premises. Moving to the next concept, that is valuation premises, which refers to the conditions and circumstances how an asset is deployed. So it is about the condition in which the asset is. Considering that, the first concept is that of highest and best use. So if you refer to Ind AS, you will find even in Ind AS it speaks of the highest and best use value. So if we are doing a valuation for an Ind AS company, a company on which Ind AS is applicable and requires the valuer to get the fair value, so in that case we would be using the highest and best use premises as mentioned in the Ind AS itself. What would this mean? So say if there are 10 assets, and in permutation and combination, these assets can be deployed in various fashions. So the manner in which, if the assets are deployed, which would give the maximum value, that means the best use and the highest value. So that would be these premises. Next is the going concern value. As chartered accountants, we very well understand the concept of going concern. And most importantly, after the advent of SA 570, even as statutory auditors, we have to now mention in our report, we have to give a details of whether the company is going concern or not. And especially in this COVID situation, many statutory auditors are worried about how do we give a statutory audit report where we mention about SA 570, whether I must tell whether the company is a going concern or not. So the concept of going concern is very much clear to chartered accountants, where we believe that the assets, the way they are deployed, they will be running for many more years in the future, and accordingly there would be a value of the asset. The next one is a as is where is value. That means in the condition in which the assets are deployed, they have to be valued in that fashion only. Neither highest and best use nor going concern. The way the assets are deployed, I have to value the assets in that fashion. It might so happen that it is also equal to the going concern value because the asset is already deployed in that manner. It can also be so that it already gives me the highest and best use value because the assets are probably deployed in the best fashion possible. But my objective would be as is where is value. That means how the assets are deployed. The next concept, the next two concepts are almost same. It is almost similar to that of the liquidation value, the liquidation fair, liquidation base value method. But under that we have two premises. One is the orderly liquidation and the other is the forced transaction. So orderly liquidation would mean that although I am going to sell the assets, I have some time to sell. So maybe I have 6 months time. So I am not forced to sell it tomorrow or the day after. I have some time to sell these assets. So I'll take time in an orderly manner. I would try to sell so that I get better value. But in a forced transaction, say because of a litigation and a requirement that was already present in the contract with a customer or with a financer, today I have to sell the assets to pay off the amount. So there I go for a forced transaction. So I do not have the time to sell the asset in an orderly manner. So that would be a forced transaction. So we have these valuation premises, highest and best use, going concern value, as is where is value, orderly liquidation and forced transaction. What are the significant elements in valuation? So there should be a possibility of a transaction. there cannot be a valuation where there is no possibility of a transaction. So say you go back to home after from your office and you open the television and you find that the Discovery Channel comes up and you find that they are showing a deer or a goat on the channel, and in the next screen they show you a tiger. So automatically you start thinking that there is a possibility of something going to happen. Maybe this tiger will now chase the goat or the deer and there could be a scene. So you stick to the channel in that case. So similarly, so that's a possibility that comes in your mind. It's not an actual thing. It might so happen that those two scenes are different and in reality the tiger may not chase the deer, but there is a possibility. So that possibility of a transaction in a commercial parlance should be there where we can carry out a valuation. So it's a very important element. And parties actually are likely to the transaction. So there has to be two persons. As in the example, there was a tiger and a goat. Similarly, to have a transaction, there should be two parties. So the parties should also be actually or likely be there so that you can carry out the valuation. Now, valuation date, that is very important. Let me tell you, valuation date does not mean the date on which you are valuing or signing the report. As in the case of our statutory audit, the financial date is 31st March and the report date is today when I am signing. Similarly, valuation date means the date for which you are carrying out the valuation. So those of you who are into mergers and acquisitions, and then those who are into issues like there is a share issue and the valuation needs to be done as per Companies Act or as per Rule 11 UA of the income tax. So there you consider the valuation date of that transaction date, of the merger date, or the date on which the shares were issued. So that is the valuation date, not the date on which you are signing. The date on which you are signing is called the report date, not the valuation date. These are all factors of, this is not so important, so I'll skip this slide. So okay, fine, we had a little bit of theory. So before I move on, let me tell you another story. So during the times of Alexander Porus, in those times when from Greece, Alexander and his army reached India, they found many yogis in India. They found these people hanging from the trees, doing some kind of yogas and all those things which they could not understand. What are these people doing? So they were amazed. What is going on? We have never seen such kind of people. Because they are coming from Greece, they have a different culture, they have a different country, everything was different, and they suddenly reach India and they find these people and they are amazed. Because they find that they are hunting from Greece, they are trying to acquire so much wealth, so much of land, and these people are doing nothing. So one of these army men came forward and asked them, what are you doing? And the answer is nothing. So they are amazed. So let me develop a concept from this, just a theory, just a philosophy. In Greece, there is no concept of rebirth. So they believe in only one life. So Alexander had to acquire everything in one life to have a successful life. But in India, these people believe in something else. They believe that they will be born again and again and again. So they have infinite lives to live. Alexander had only one life to live. But these people know that they will be reborn and they will live infinite lives. So for Alexander, whatever you achieve in one life divided by one gives you the same result. But these people thought, whatever I achieve divided by my infinite lives will give me 0. So there is nothing that I have to do. So this is only a concept. So see, The people from Greece probably were valuing their lives in a different manner. They had different perspective. And these people, again, human beings, they had a different way to look towards life. So the value for life was different because it's subjective, because it depends on the person who is valuing, the perspective, the objective that he has in mind. So all these things get into valuation. Let us now move to the valuation techniques, the approaches and methods that we have in valuation. We have understood what is value, what are the valuation bases, what are the valuation premises. We already have understood that valuation is very subjective. But how to carry out this valuation? So we have three approaches: market approach, income approach, and cost approach. So this market approach is basically linked to market. Income approach is linked to the future incomes. And the cost approach is from the perspective of the asset, the cost of having it, the cost of rebuilding it. So let us move into the methods, the sub methods under each of these approaches. So under market approach, the first one is market price method. So when you are carrying out a valuation for the subject asset that you are valuing, if you have a reference in the market price, it's readily available, then you will always go for a market price method. So if someone asks you to value the shares of Reliance Industries Limited as on 31st March 2020, so obviously you will take references from the stock exchange. And because you have a readily available price in the market, so you will follow the market price method. The comparable companies multiple. Now under this method, there is no market price readily available. So the companies have to go for a different method. We all have heard about the price earning ratio. The price earning ratio generally means the share price divided by the earnings per share. So that gives you the price earning ratio. So now let's say the company that I have to value, an unlisted company which does not have a readily available market price. So I can take similar companies which are in the same industry, are almost of the same size in the and which are listed. So I can get their prices. I know about their earnings. So I calculate the price earning ratio of the industry or those companies which are the reference companies. I know the earnings of the company that I am valuing. So now I will use that price earning ratio of those companies and the earnings of my company and find the price that should be of my company. So what I would be doing is I would be dividing the price earning ratio with my earnings so that I can arrive to the price of the company that I am valuing. Now we have another concept called comparable transactions multiple. So say the company that I am valuing, it does not have earnings or it does not have profits. So how will I use that price earning ratio? I cannot leverage the figure with the same price earning ratio in that case. So there are industries where the profits are nil or negative. So if you have to value a real estate company, that will not give you a normal earnings or in all the years, because the flats are not sold every year. I am into a project, it might be sold after a few years. There are other new concepts, especially the tech startups or startups like Uber, then startups like Ola, and all these companies which do not earn profits. So how to do a valuation for them? So there we generally use the transactions multiple. So maybe I have a reference of similar companies in the market. What are their prices and what are their transactions? Transactions could be sales. So maybe I compare it with the sales. So I know the sales of my company, the company that I have to value. I know the sales of those companies which are in the market, and I also know the prices of those companies which are in the market. So I will use that price to sales ratio and use my sales to find out the price of my company. In fact, let me tell you, in this example, when I spoke of startups, there is a big possibility that there would be no similar companies which are in the same industry, because many of these companies are coming up with new concepts. So in that case, it becomes difficult to do the valuation. And in fact, in place of transactions, many a times quantities are also being used. That means Amazon has a customer base, say 10 millions, and I have a customer base of 10,000. So many a times this data is also used to carry out the valuation. So if a similar, if a business, although may not be of the similar nature, but the future is dependent on the customer size. So that company has reached around 10 million customers and my company only 10,000. So my value would be accordingly 1,000 times less, 10,000 times lesser than that of that company, because I have 10,000 times lesser customers. So even these are being used to do the valuations. And a very interesting thing, again, the subjectivity, how these valuations are being done and how these companies with losses are having such big valuation based on the possibilities that is lying in the future, and no one has seen that future. And this area is also developing as an area of risk. Currently, we are seeing what happens when the big banks fail. But I am sure we will be seeing in the future where we will find the equity investors will also have to face the same failure as that of the depositors that is happening today, when the valuations of these big companies will crash, or they will not have the earnings that is being expected today. Friends, there is a very important concept of discounts and control premium in this market approach. So for a moment, let's say Vishnu Kumar Tulsi, and the president of the VIP Chartered Accountants Association, holds 49% shares of a company. And Prakash G. Patwari is having 2% shares of that company. So Vishnu ji has 49% shares, Prakash ji has 2% shares in a company. Now, we are trying to value shares of that company. Let's say a person having 3% shares of that company wants to go out, and Prakash ji and Vishnu ji, both of them, wants to buy those shares. Now let me say, whatever be the normal price of the share, Prakash ji would be ready to pay that. However, Vishnu ji would be willing to pay more. Why? Because once he buys those 3% shares, he already has 49%. So he will become 52% shareholder of that company. He will become a majority shareholder. So he will be having more control in the company. So he will be willing to pay a control premium. So that is the idea. And the discount is the right opposite of that concept. So if you have got that abnormal price from the point of view of the ones who have control in the company, and you want to value the share for a minority shareholder, in that case, you have to discount the price to reach the value of the share from the perspective of a minority shareholder. So more or less, these are the most common and the methods under the market approach which have been notified or which have been codified in the standards. So let's move to the next concept, the next method, income approach. And this is the most common approach for all chartered accountants, because first of all, we have used these concepts even in our exams. While passing the CA final exams, we have done various sums on discounted cash flows, and I am sure that the valuation under the income approach is more subjective, and we prefer going with that because it depends on the projections. And when you have the future cash flow projections, you discount them to the present value with an interest rate or a specific rate that the company expects from the venture. So based on that, the future cash flows are discounted and you get the price of the company as on date, as on the present date, the present value you derive. While following this discounted cash flows method or any of these methods, the concept of terminal value would be very important. Many a times it might so happen that we omit this concept of terminal value. The terminal value means if we have a project where we are taking the discounted cash flows, the future cash flows. So at the end of the project will have a scrap value or a terminal value. That value also has to be discounted to the present day. So do not miss the terminal value. Even in fact, in the concept of valuation, the terminal value is called the elephant in valuation. If you miss out this terminal value, so you will ultimately end up doing a wrong valuation where you will have a small value and you will miss the elephant in the valuation. The next is the relief from royalty. So basically, these all concepts are based on discounting of future cash flows only, the flows, but the concept is different only from the perspective, because say there is a mine, and you pay a royalty for that mine. Now you get an option to purchase that mine. So what would be the value of the mine for you? You will be saving the royalty amount in the future. Now you are paying a royalty. In future you will not be paying the royalty, rather you will be owning the mine. So you will be actually calculating the relief of royalty, and that royalty will be discounted to the current date to find out the value. So this is basically this method. Then comes the multi-period excess earnings. So say if you think to acquire an asset or acquire a project which will increase the earnings of your company, so that means you will be having excess earnings in the future. So you calculate this excess earning that you are going to earn in the future and you discount it to find out the value of the new project, the new asset that you are going to acquire. So that would be the multi-period excess earnings method. Now with and without method. So again the same concept. If I have an asset and if I do not have an asset, what would be the difference in earnings, or what would be the difference in cash flows rather? So you again calculate the differential cash flows of the future, discount it with the proper rate, and you find out the value of that asset which you are valuing. The last one is the option pricing model, which is basically a mathematical model which is used to value options. So in the share market, we know that options are a very important tool that is used, and even in real life, in many a times there could be options even in contracts with different parties. So in that case, to value this option pricing model is followed. The last one was the cost approach. So in the cost approach, we have two methods: replacement cost. So I have an asset. So if I have to value it, I can check out what would be my replacement cost, and that replacement cost I'll be considering as the value under the cost approach method for replacement cost. Another would be the reproduction cost. So maybe I will see the asset that I am having. If I have to build that asset now for myself, what would be the cost? What would be the material cost, the labor cost, and the other overheads? And accordingly, I will find out the reproduction cost of that asset, and I will consider that value as the value of my asset under the cost approach method, reproduction cost. So these are basically the three methods: market approach, income approach, cost approach, and these were the sub methods that we generally follow while doing the valuation. Friends, while doing valuation, we have to also keep in mind other factors like the scope of the valuation, the terms of the valuation. So why are you carrying out a valuation? Why this valuation is needed? That you have to keep in mind. The responsibility that has been given on you. So the responsibility that is there in the, and as a valuer, now since I'll be speaking about the registered valuer concept also, which is very important nowadays, especially for all the valuations under the Companies Act 2013 and the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code also. So because only a registered valuer can carry out those valuations. These Companies Act, while codifying this concept of registered valuer, has also given some responsibilities on the valuer. Like as auditors, we have some responsibilities. Similarly, as valuers also, we cannot just find out a value. We have to take the responsibility as to how that valuation has been derived. That cannot be a whimsical valuation. Then the authority is also very important. So if I am doing an income tax valuation, the authority is income tax. If I am doing a valuation under the requirement of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, then I have to again understand that here the authority would be IBBI, and I have to take cognizance of all those rules and guidance as given under IBBI. So the authority is also very important. Confidentiality, yes, the confidentiality of data is very important, because for a startup which are being valued for hundreds and thousands of crores now, just think, they might be sharing so much of data with you, their full projections of the future, and you have all those data, and you have to maintain the confidentiality of the data. You cannot obviously make it privy to someone else. Then there are limitations also. Regarding the limitations, I will speak a bit more in the end if I get some time, because this is very important. So because as a valuer, you will have some limitations. So in the report, we will be mentioning about the limitations that we have, or the caveats. In fact, on 1st September, IBBI has already given a guideline in this regard, where they have already given a few caveats that we have to give. And they have also mentioned about a few caveats that we cannot give. That means that is the part of responsibility. By giving disclaimers or the limitations or the caveats, we cannot wash off our hands from the responsibility as a valuer. And obviously reporting. In fact, if you when you will be seeing the standards, the international valuation standard or the valuation standards as issued by the ICAI RVO, you will find that it's not only a one-page report where you are giving the value. You have to mention the purpose of valuation. You have to define the subject asset that you are valuing. You have to mention about the valuation basis, as I already mentioned. You will have to discuss the valuation premises and why you are choosing a valuation based on premise. Then you have to also discuss the methods of valuation, and then you have to tell why you are choosing a specific method to carry out the valuation. Then the source of information that you have gathered, the source of information, what kind of information you have, how much you are relying on them. Then from the other circumstances that you have come across, what are the assumptions that you have and which you are using to carry out the valuation, even they have to be mentioned. So basically it's a the report has to be a very, very comprehensive one, having all minute details. as I have mentioned, and as chartered accountants, we all know that even in accounting, there could be various ways of carrying out the accounting process. There could be various ways in representing an accounts, a financial report, and that is why there are accounting standards, there are financial reporting standards. Those standards basically help us to follow specific things so that at the end of the day, a proper standard accounts is prepared, so that all the accounts, the financial statements are comparable. Otherwise, they will not be comparable. Similarly, even in the auditing, the assignment, the work that an auditor does is very important. But then that there has to be some standards so that all the auditors follow those standards. And ultimately, the reporting that we do at the end is defined and is under a limit where you can understand the audit report. Otherwise, I will give a kind of audit report for a different company, someone else will give some other kind of report. Then the users of the reports, the users of the financial statements will not understand. Similarly, in our lives, all the religions, they also teach us about how to live our life. But even they felt that there should be a holy book. The standards they have set for the way we live, the way human beings should live, they have also codified them, and that is why there are so many holy books. Now, from the beginning of my deliberation today, I have said that valuation is very subjective. You all have seen, even in the case of Indra and in other circumstances, how valuation could vary from circumstance to circumstance, and even it could depend on a valuer. So there is a very important thing, and there is a need for valuation standards also. And there are valuation standards for all the valuers, that is chartered accountants or registered valuers, for financial assets and securities. The Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, they have also issued valuation standards. Now, other than them, in India, no one has issued valuation standards. So generally, the valuers here, they follow the international valuation standards. The international valuation standard was last modified in January 2020. So on screen, you have the valuation standards which have been issued both under the international valuation standards and that by the ICAI valuation standards. So in this, you will find that I have colored the same standards similarly, so that like scope of work, you will find that it's 101 under international valuation standards, whereas 201 speaks of scope of work analysis and evaluation, which has been issued by ICAI valuation standards. So these are almost similar standards. However, in the valuation standards issued by the International Valuation Standards Council, you will find that there are a few more valuation standards. That is 220 non-financial liabilities. So there was no standard for liabilities. Now they have also this is the new edition where this was newly brought in January 2020. The other three are plant and equipment, real property interests, and development property. Now, our institute has not issued standards on this because our institute thought that their domain is finance. So let us not move into the area of plant and equipment, real properties, development properties, and that has rightly been done by the institute in that case. But what is the importance of this plant and equipment, real property interest, development property? Why is it important? This is important because since the concept of registered valuer has come, under registered valuers, again there are three classes of asset. Like I am a registered valuer for securities or financial assets. So I cannot value plant and machinery or land and building. A registered valuer who has qualified for plant and machinery, or a registered valuer who has qualified for land and building can only carry out that valuation. My domain would only stick to financial assets or securities or financial assets. So mostly we all chartered accountants, we have the qualification to become the registered valuer for securities or financial assets. But yes, we have to go through a process for that. We have to take exams and we have to become registered valuers. I'll be speaking about it in my the upcoming slides. Now, opportunities, if I come to the opportunities, so these opportunities come because of the regulators and the regulations. Insolvency and bankruptcy code. So resolution professional requires to appoint 2 valuers under each class of asset. So this automatically gives a scope for valuers, the valuation to be done, and it gives scope to 6 valuers. So a two valuers each under the class of the 3 assets, 3 asset classes. Then under SEBI, there are various requirements. Even under the RBI guidelines, there are various requirements. Income Tax Companies Act, they have also specified where valuation is required. So in that manner, the opportunities are huge for valuers, but a problem is there that a registered valuer only has the opportunity to carry out valuation as of date under the Companies Act, under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, but not under Income Tax Act. Not under the Income Tax Act. I will share with you a Word file now in the chat box. I can share in the chat box, right? So I have shared the file. Can the organizers confirm whether this document that I have shared has reached you all? Okay.
Yes,
Thank
it's
you.
received.
Thank you so much. So in this document, you will find various opportunities that come up from the various sections of the Companies Act or the requirements of SEBI.
Define Patra.
So you can download this Word file and you can always use this as a reference. So the generally under these regulations, where these opportunities come from, whenever there is a fresh issue or transfer of shares, if there is a fresh issue, then you need a valuation in Companies Act. If there is a transfer of share, you need a valuation as per the Rule 11 UA of income tax. When there is a business combination, mergers or amalgamations, demergers, then again a requirement for valuation comes up. Then employee, whenever a company has to give employee stock options, again valuation is required. Then under IBC, as I already mentioned, fair value and liquidation value has to be calculated, and for that again 6 valuers are to be appointed, 2 under each class of asset. Then even under the Ind AS, although there are not many Ind AS companies, and especially in the eastern part of this country, but still in the coming days, Ind AS will have more scope, because even much smaller companies will also have to follow Ind AS. And in that case, Ind AS 103, 102 and the other Ind AS which are there will again require valuation. And Ind AS 113 specifically is on fair value. So the most of the valuation requirements come up from Ind AS 113. So now, having spoken about value, the methods, the valuation basis, premises, Now, also about the opportunities, we need to know how can we grab these opportunities, because when we speak of Rule 11 UA and the valuation requirement in income tax, we know that merchant bankers are doing the valuation, the accountants have been removed, and under the net asset method, obviously we can do the valuation. But when we come to Companies Act and the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, then chartered accountants cannot carry out the valuation. A registered valuer registered with IBBI can only carry out the valuation. So for that, we chartered accountants have to become registered valuers first. And how do we go about it? So, first of all, let me give you a brief of this. When the new Companies Act 2013 came, provisions were already there for insolvency resolution professionals, for valuers. However, those sections were not notified. And ultimately in 2016, it was notified for resolution professionals. And on 18th October 2017, it was notified for the registered valuers. But since there were lack of awareness, many registered valuers were not there. In fact, in the beginning, they could not start taking examinations also. Even the course started only after 1st April 2018. So all these things took some time. And ultimately, on 1st February 2019, it was made mandatory. So from 1st February 2019, if there is a requirement of a valuation, it has to be done by a registered valuer only under the Companies Act or the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. So if you have to become a registered valuer, I would suggest please note down the site address www.ibbi.gov.in. IBBI basically stands for the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, who is the regulator at this point of time for registered valuers. Although think tanks are already working on this, and probably in the future a new regulator will come up for registered valuers. So temporarily it's being handled by IBBI. So you have to go to www.ibbi.gov.in. Under services and examination, you will find more details about the registered valuers. In fact, there you will find the syllabus of how to become a registered valuer, and the syllabus is given. A new syllabus has been prescribed from 1st June 2020. You will get it on the site. You can download it, you can go through it. And then what's the process for this examination? Friends, let me explain this to you in a different manner. For a moment, just think that IBBI is an university. For a moment, you consider IBBI to be a university. So it will design the course, but it will not actually give training to you. Now for training, there must be colleges. So these are called RVOs, Registered Valuers Organizations. Again, on the IBBI site, under those menu bars, you will find the RVOs which are registered already with IBBI. Our institute has also formed a RVO called as the ICAI RVO. There are other RVOs also. And if you want to become a registered valuer for securities and financial assets, then you will have to take training from one RVO who is giving the training under this head of securities or financial assets. So there could be RVOs who are not giving the services for all the assets, like our institute is only giving for securities and financial assets, not land and building and plant and machinery. So as chartered accountants, do not think that you have to do the take the training only from ICAI RVO. You can take it from other RVOs also. So whoever is holding a 50 hours training, first of all, these RVOs will hold a 50 hours training. So if you want to become a registered valuer, first of all, take this training. You will get a certificate at the end of the training for successfully completing the 50 hours training, where attendance is a strict thing. So you have to be present. The next thing would be the examination, and these exams are being taken by NISM. The infrastructure of NISM is being used. You will have to register yourself with NISM. You will have to upload your certificate of 50 hours training in the site. Then they will allow you to sit for exam. You can choose the examination center, pay 1,500 rupees, and on these it's a 2 hours exam. So on the day of the exam, you reach that center you have chosen, you appear for the exam. It will be a 2 hours exam, 100 marks. According to the new syllabus, there would be 90 questions. 10 questions would be of 2 marks each. And these 10 questions will be from case studies. There will be 3 case studies, and from that they will ask you these 10 questions, which would be of 2 marks each. The other 80 questions would be of 1 mark each. 1/4 is the negative marking. So if a question, if an answer has 2 marks, so if you make a mistake, half of the marks will be deducted. That means if it's a 1 mark question, 1/4 of the mark will be deducted. And you have to get 60%. The result will appear on the screen as when you submit your answer sheet. It's a multiple choice question. Let me tell you, it's a MCQ where a 4 answers would be given to each question, and you will have to choose one. And yes, you can skip a question if you want. I have already mentioned that there are these 3 classes of asset. So if there is a chartered accountant who is from a science background or an engineering background, he can very well check the criteria and also become a registered valuer for either of land and building or plant and machinery also. So necessary qualification and experience. All of you are chartered accountants are here. So you all are eligible. So nothing to worry. Only thing is to register yourself as a registered valuer. First of all, you need to have 3 years of experience. So all those of you who are having 3 years of experience in practice, you can very well register yourself as registered valuers after passing the examination. So these are again the qualifications and experience. I think there is no need to reiterate these issues. 50 hours training I have already spoken of. Enroll for exam, pass the exam. So generally this is the overview, opportunities for a valuer and the method of how to become a registered valuer. So I was told that I'll be speaking, I said that I would be speaking for 1 hour. So I think I have done that. So now I think the other seniors who are here, since this is also a group discussion, so I think the other registered valuers who are already here and the other seniors who have been conducting valuation for years, they can also give their inputs, and then we can have a question answer session.
Devan, what the charges for that, for the admission or the?
Okay. So this 50 hours training has to be taken, for which generally the charges vary from 20,000 to 35,000, because it depends on the RVO who is imparting the training. And I think if someone is holding it virtually now, I think probably the course fee would be much lesser. And the exam that we give, each of the exam, they cost us rupees 1,500. So, and one can appear for as many as times as he wants. So there is no bar on that.
So many RVO is there. Which RVO is required? or
Sir,
anyone? Which one
sir,
is best?
let me tell you, sir, that all the RVOs are putting in enough effort to bring in the best faculties so that they can give us the best training. But at the end of the day, let me tell you, uh, we have to pass the exam and we have to read the materials. So uh, the RVO, which from where we are taking the training, would not matter much. But yes, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India is a has a good RVO, and the material that they will share with you in the form of presentations and books will also be useful for all of us.
It means institute provided the institute is providing the good material to prepare the exam.
So whenever they hold a 50 hours training, if you take that training, the lecturers, the speakers who would be speaking, they would be sharing their presentations, and even the institute has, I think, small books, 4 modules or something like that, so that those books will also be shared. So they are a good reference. But apart from that, I found that there is a book of Devendra Lodha ji. That book is very good in the sense from the exam point of view, because it has around 4,000 5,000 MCQs already in that book. And if after going through the syllabus, if someone uh, goes through that 4,000 5,000 questions before the exam, so I think he or she will be able to clear the exam comfortably.
Good.
I'll be sharing one more file. So, oh, network disconnected. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No, actually, I'm trying to share another document. It's not going. It says disconnected. Let me try again. No, it's not going. So what I will do, I will share this file also by mail with you, so that maybe you can share with the participants through mail. This contains the latest guideline that has been issued by IBBI, where you will find all the caveats, the disclaimers they have mentioned, which one has to give while issuing a valuation report. I think, yes sir, yes.
Devan, क्या हम लोगों के लिए अपॉर्चुनिटी बेसिकली है? काइंडली एलोबरेट ऑन दैट दोज एरियाज. कैसे कैसे हम लोग अपॉर्चुनिटी ग्रैब कर सकें यहाँ पे वैल्यूएशन के फील्ड में?
Sir, main opportunity comes out from all the legislations. So Companies Act, if you see the Companies Act, the file that I have shared, you will find that when there is a merger, there is a requirement of valuation. Then when there is a fresh issue of shares, there is a requirement of valuation. If there is an employee stock option, then again there is a requirement of valuation. So these kind of valuation requirements are there. Now, whichever company is going through those transactions or those mergers, they have to get this valued. But as on date, chartered accountants no more can do that valuation, although these are the valuation opportunities. Now it has to be done by a registered valuer only. So the first step that we need to follow is to become a registered valuer, so that we can grab that opportunity. The other requirements of valuation may not require a registered valuer. That can be done by a chartered accountant. So say if there is a startup, and it requires venture capital, so in that case, the startup can approach you that as a valuer, please prepare a valuation for my team, so that we can approach to the venture capitalists, so that ultimately we can get some funds to run the business in the future. One question has come to me in the chat box. Is it first register, then 50 hours training, then exam? So this, I will try to answer this question. I believe that Mr. Srijit Chakrabarti is still here. So, sir, first of all, whenever a RVO comes out with a training, then you have to register with that RVO. When you do that, you will be registering yourself with the RVO and you will also be paying for the 50 hours training. That would be the first step. So whenever there is a 50 hours training, you register with them. Before that, you need not do anything. Once this training is over, you register yourself in the NISM site, even in the IBBI site. When you will go to examination, ultimately when you go to registered valuers, financial assets and securities exam, then you will be taken to the site of NISM from there. There you have to upload that 50 hours training certificate, and then you can select your date, your choice of area or location where you want to give the exam. Wherever these NISM people have their centers, you can go there and you can appear for the exam in the selected time. After that, you have to take the registration with IBBI and the RVO to become a registered valuer finally.
Yes, President Saab, Tulsian ji is there. Okay. Any other question round from?
Yes, Srijit ji has added one more question. Lots of documents are asked for. When are these documents to be submitted? Sir, during the training also we need to submit a few of the documents, because the RVO wants to ensure that you are eligible to take the 50 hours training, and that is why they ask for it. Then again, after the examinations, when you will become a registered valuer and you will be registering yourself, then they would be again asking for these documents, and you have to upload all those documents after scanning on their site. If they ask for, you will have to also carry the originals to the RVO, and a verification might be done by them. Later on, they will send a report to IBBI, and then IBBI will register you as a registered valuer. So I think if the members here have anything to share their experience on valuation, since this is a group discussion, I think that will enrich all of us.
Yes, so many valuers are there now.
Yes,
Participant in our chat.
Correct. So I think that could be a good option if they can share their experience with us. So even we will get enriched by their experience.